Has it changed your relationship?
Not particularly. We spend a lot of time together. As having a really close family, that we have a very normal relationship.
Pippa Middleton has always kept her personal life guarded, elegant, and far from headlines. But today, everything changes. In a rare emotional moment, she broke her silence, and what she revealed left the room in tears. Why now? What pushed her to speak? And what does this mean for her marriage to James Matthews? For years, they appeared unshakable. Until now. Was this a message, a warning, or a quiet plea for peace? Stay with us, because what Pippa just said about her husband might change how you see their picture-perfect life forever. A night of elegance turns tense. Kensington Palace glowed with quiet elegance. The Harmony for Hope Gala, a favorite among royal circles, promised a night of grace, goodwill, and glittering support for youth arts education. As guests arrived, Hollywood names, international diplomats, and music icons, they were greeted by classical quartets and champagne towers. It was a carefully curated scene, with the palace dressed in soft gold lighting and royal staff moving with quiet precision. Prince William and Catherine entered to warm applause. William, in classic black tie, looked calm but focused. Catherine, in a midnight blue gown, was grace personified. Together, they gave off the image of everything the monarchy wanted to project: calm, elegant, involved. They smiled for cameras, mingled politely, and offered practiced remarks on the power of the arts. Everything was flawless. Dinner passed smoothly. Speeches were given. A youth orchestra brought the audience to its feet. Then came the final announcement. The host, smiling brightly, said, "To close our night, a performance from the internationally celebrated pianist Lang Lang." Applause rose again, but something in the air shifted as he stepped onto the stage. There was a slight hush. Lang Lang didn't just bring music. He brought weight. Rather than sit down and play, he stepped up to the microphone. "It's beautiful to see royalty supporting music," he began. "But I often wonder, do they feel it or just fund it?" A few polite chuckles followed, but his gaze held steady, right at Prince William. "Tonight, I'd like to issue a challenge. I would be honored to perform a duet at the Royal Albert Hall with someone who truly believes in what this music represents." The room froze, not in confusion, but in collective awe. What just happened? A prince had been publicly challenged on his own turf, and while the applause continued politely, the tension was unmistakable. Catherine looked over at William. He offered a faint smile, but his eyes told a different story. This wasn't just a gala anymore. It was personal, and what happened next would change everything. Lang Lang's mic dropped. Lang Lang sat down after his statement, but his words still hung heavy in the air. He launched into a flawless performance, technically brilliant, emotionally piercing, but all anyone could think about was his challenge. A duet with royalty. It was bold, daring, possibly even disrespectful. Or was it an invitation? That question rippled through the crowd with every note he played. William remained composed, but those closest to him could see the tension beneath. He wasn't angry. He was thinking, processing. For a man raised in protocol, this was new ground. Royals aren't used to being put on the spot, especially by artists, especially in public. Lang Lang had done something unthinkable, turned a polished event into a moment of raw accountability. After the final note, the crowd gave Lang Lang a standing ovation, but it felt different. It wasn't just about his music. It was about the moment. People looked at William. Would he respond? Would he brush it off with a clever remark? But the prince didn't speak. He simply nodded across the room, gave a small smile, and let silence do the talking. Backstage, aides scrambled. "Should we issue a statement?" one whispered. Catherine shook her head. "No, let it sit." And sit it did. Social media caught fire that night. That royal showdown began trending. Commentators speculated. Critics took sides. But inside the palace, William wasn't talking to anyone. He walked quietly through the halls until he reached a place he hadn't visited in years. Away from the noise, away from the press and palace whispers, William found himself standing in front of a door he hadn't opened in ages. It led to the nursery, the very room he and Harry once played in. But tonight, it wasn't just nostalgia drawing him in. It was something deeper, something calling. Because sometimes, the first step to answering a challenge is listening to the past. A prince walks alone. The nursery had long been converted into a reading space. Soft chairs, old books, a forgotten upright piano in the corner. William stepped inside quietly. He didn't turn on the main lights. The glow from the hallway cast just enough to see. Dust had gathered on the piano lid. He lifted it gently. His reflection stared back in the dark wood, older, heavier, with duty. He pressed a single key. It wobbled, slightly off pitch, but the sound unlocked a door in his memory. He remembered his mother, Diana, sitting beside him, laughing as they tried to play a simple tune. She never scolded him when he got it wrong. She just encouraged him to try again. "It's not about playing it right," she used to say. "It's about playing it with heart." William sat down. His fingers hovered above the keys. He tried a scale, missed a few notes, then tried again. He wasn't thinking about Lang Lang. He was thinking about her. And somewhere in the middle of that old melody, he felt the lump in his throat rise. Not from embarrassment, but from realization. This wasn't about a challenge. It wasn't about media or monarchy. It was about legacy, his own and his mother's. That night, he didn't tell anyone. He simply picked up his phone, made one call, and left a message. "Find me a piano teacher. Not for show, for real." The next morning, there was no press release, no palace update. But behind the scenes, a new name was quietly added to the palace visitors' log. A man who would test him, break him down, and build him back up, one note at a time. Because this wasn't going to be about royalty anymore. It was going to be about truth. Enter Sir Edward Avery. He arrived without fanfare, no photographers, no royal greeting party, just an unmarked car and a man in a weathered gray coat. Sir Edward Avery, once a legend in the world of classical piano, now walked with a cane and a limp, the legacy of a stroke that had stolen the spotlight from him mid-performance. He hadn't taught in over a decade. But when he received the palace's call, he didn't say no. Not because it was a royal request, but because it was personal. William met him in the palace library. No suit, no titles, just genes and nerves. "I don't want flattery," he said. "I want to learn. I want to be better." Sir Edward looked him up and down, unimpressed. "You want to play for the public?" he asked. William shook his head. "No, I want to play for someone who's not here anymore." Sir Edward paused, nodded once, and said, "Then I'll stay. But understand this, you're not royalty to me. You're just a student." The first few lessons were brutal. William's hands were stiff, his timing sloppy. Sir Edward didn't sugarcoat a thing. "Stop playing like you're scared of your own hands," he barked. "The piano doesn't care who your grandmother was." Every mistake was dissected. Every triumph was muted. It wasn't a classroom. It was a battlefield, with keys instead of swords. But through the criticism, something powerful began to form. Respect. William never showed ego, never asked for exceptions. And Sir Edward, for all his gruffness, began to see potential. "There's music in you," he said one night. "It's just buried under protocol." And for the first time, William believed that too. As the weeks went on, the palace around them stayed the same: duties, handshakes, and speeches. But behind one locked door, a different story was unfolding. It wasn't about appearances. It was about perseverance. Because for the first time in years, William wasn't just following a script. He was writing his own. Discipline and defiance. William had always lived by a schedule, a life planned down to the minute. But when piano entered the picture, that structure began to shift. Quietly, subtly, a 10-minute briefing would be cut to 5. A lunch event moved up by half an hour, all so that by nightfall, the prince could disappear into that music room and grind through scales until his fingers ached. Royal aides took notice. One staffer whispered, "We're rearranging everything around this music thing." But they didn't complain. They saw the change in him. He stood straighter, spoke clearer, and even when exhausted, there was something alive in his eyes that hadn't been there in years. Sir Edward's lessons weren't just about posture, they were about purpose. Physically, it took a toll. His knuckles were red, his wrists stiff. Sometimes, the pain would shoot up to his elbows. Catherine found him icing his hands in the kitchen late at night. "You don't have to do this," she said once. He looked at her, sweat on his brow, and replied, "I do. Not because I have to, because I finally want to." Sir Edward didn't let up. If William showed up even 1 minute late, the door stayed shut. "If you want the respect of musicians, you earn it," he warned. "Don't expect it because of your last name." William never missed again. The music room became more than practice space. It became rebellion, a place where he could stop being the heir and just be a man, chasing something honest. But even the strongest will can bend under pressure. And as William fought through pain, perfection, and public scrutiny, there was someone quietly holding everything together. She wasn't playing scales, but her role was just as essential to this journey. Catherine's role. Catherine had always been the calm within the storm. As William pushed himself nightly to the edge of burnout, she didn't interfere. She protected. She ensured the kids had their routines, the staff kept press at bay, and the house stayed steady. She became the unseen scaffolding holding up his world, and she did it without ever asking for credit. When William doubted himself, she didn't give him speeches. She gave him space. And when space wasn't enough, she gave him subtle reminders. A steaming cup of tea left beside the piano. A childhood photo slipped under a music book. A handwritten note taped to his mirror. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true. There were hard nights. One in particular, after William failed 3 times to finish a Chopin piece, he punched the lid of the piano and stormed off. Catherine found him alone in the hallway, hunched and quiet. "I'm not good enough," he said. She didn't argue. She just took his hand, led him back into the room, and sat beside him. They played one key together, then another, then one more, until the silence turned to sound again. Their partnership in this journey wasn't flashy. It wasn't public, but it was powerful. While William faced the music, Catherine kept the melody of their life in tune. "You've already done the hardest part," she told him once. "You started. And sometimes, that's all it takes." Royal rumors catch fire. It was bound to happen. One blurry photo, snapped through the palace windows, showed Prince William at the piano, head bowed, sheet music open. The moment it hit the internet, the speculation exploded. "Prince William training for a Lang Lang showdown?" blared one headline. "Royal revenge in the form of music," joked another. In less than 24 hours, the image had been shared over 1 million times. Suddenly, what had started as a deeply personal journey became public entertainment. Social media turned it into a spectacle. Memes, mashups, even piano battle prediction polls. Some people mocked it, others supported him. But one thing was certain: everyone was watching. Aides were flooded with media requests. Reporters camped outside Kensington. Even international networks picked it up. The world wanted answers. But inside the palace, William didn't say a word. No statement, no press conference. He just kept practicing. "He's not hiding," Catherine assured their staff. "He's focusing." Still, The pressure was immense. And it wasn't just William who felt it. The children started asking questions. "Why is Daddy on the news?" George asked, puzzled by the attention. Catherine calmly replied, "Because he's doing something brave." What was once quiet growth became a public countdown. But something remarkable happened. Support began to pour in from unexpected corners. A 90-year-old grandmother sent in a letter. "Tell him I believe in him." A school for deaf children sent a video of students signing, "Good luck, Prince William." It wasn't about piano anymore. It was about courage. And people felt it. While the world picked sides, laughed, and speculated, there was one man everyone was still waiting to hear from. The one who'd thrown down the challenge in the first place. And when Lang Lang finally spoke, what he said added even more fuel to the fire. Lang Lang responds, "Reckless, maybe. Brave, we'll see." Lang Lang didn't say anything at first. For weeks, he ignored the growing media circus. But when a BBC reporter finally caught up with him in Paris, his words were measured, but sharp. "Is Prince William playing?" the interviewer asked. Lang Lang smiled faintly. "I've heard he's practicing. That's surprising and bold." He didn't dismiss William. In fact, he praised him for trying. "Most people wouldn't dare accept such a public challenge," he said. "It's risky, maybe reckless, but it takes courage." The reporter followed up. "Do you think he's ready?" Lang Lang paused. "The stage is the equalizer," he said. "It doesn't care who you are, only what you feel." Those words spread like wildfire. "Reckless, maybe. Brave? We'll see," became the quote of the week. William heard the clip, but didn't respond. He simply kept practicing. But privately, Sir Edward wasn't impressed. "Stage is the equalizer?" he scoffed. "Let's show him what that really means." It wasn't ego, it was pride. For William, for the work he'd done. Lang Lang's comments weren't cruel, but they reignited the buzz. People now viewed the Royal Albert Hall performance as more than music. It was a philosophical clash. Tradition versus talent. Protocol versus passion. And at the center of it all, a prince trying to play not to win, but to be understood. As public pressure surged and Lang Lang's subtle challenge echoed worldwide, something inside William shifted again. Because this journey wasn't about rivalry anymore, it had become about rediscovery. The piano wasn't just an instrument, it was a mirror, and William was finally ready to look at his reflection. A prince rediscovers himself. At first, every scale William played was about performance, hitting the right note, beating the doubt, proving something, to Lang Lang, to the public, maybe even to himself. But slowly, the reason began to change. The challenge became something softer, more sacred. He wasn't just playing music, he was reconnecting with a part of himself long buried beneath years of duty. He started practicing outside of lesson hours, finger exercises during car rides, music apps downloaded on his phone, piano pieces scribbled into briefing folders. One aide whispered, "He taps piano rhythms under the table during council meetings." William laughed when asked. "Keeps me sane," he said. But everyone could feel it. He was lighter, more present, more human. Childhood memories returned uninvited, but welcome. Diana humming while folding clothes, her hands guiding his on those first notes. The old Christmas tune they tried, and failed, to play together. These weren't just warm flashes, they became fuel. "This isn't just about a concert," he told Catherine one night. "It's about remembering who I was before I had to be someone else." Even Sir Edward noticed the shift. "You're not fighting anymore," he said during one rehearsal. "You're listening." And it showed. William's playing grew less rigid, less rehearsed. It had feeling. He wasn't chasing notes. He was telling a story. By then, William wasn't training to impress. He was playing to feel whole again. The piano had become his journal, each note a sentence, each session a confession. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about the crown. He was thinking about clarity. Catherine's secret gift. The worst kind of failure is the one that whispers, not the one that shouts. And on this night, the silence in Kensington Palace was deafening. William had just walked out of rehearsal after Sir Edward cut him off mid-piece, shaking his head in disappointment. "Emotion isn't posture," he'd muttered, "it's honesty." That single sentence landed harder than any tabloid headline. William didn't storm off. He just faded quietly into the background. When he finally returned to his room, weary and defeated, there it was, a plain envelope on the bed. No crest, no seal, just his name, Wills, written in Catherine's neat script. Inside was a photograph, an old one, faded at the edges. It showed a young William sitting beside Princess Diana at the same nursery piano he now practiced on every night. She was laughing, her hand on his shoulder, the other on the keys. He was looking up at her like the world stopped spinning just to watch her play. Tucked behind the photo was a short note. "She believed in you. So do I." That's all it said. No pressure, no expectations. Just belief. William sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the photo. His hands, sore from practice, trembled slightly. But for the first time in days, the weight didn't feel heavy. It felt full. That night, he didn't go to the music room. He went to the nursery, sat down at the old upright, and played. Not for the press, not for the stage. Just for her. The melody wasn't perfect. The rhythm wandered. But every note carried memory, not performance. It wasn't about being a prince or a pianist. It was about being her son. And that changed everything. That quiet night in the nursery was the shift. From that moment on, William wasn't training to impress the world. He was playing to connect with it. But the world, oh, it was still watching. And it wasn't going to wait quietly. As whispers grew louder and speculation turned into frenzy, the press was about to turn William's private journey into a public countdown. World watches. It started with a single photo. Blurry, long-lensed, and likely taken from across Hyde Park. But even through the grain, it was unmistakable. Prince William, sleeves rolled up, seated at the baby grand piano in the palace's west wing. His head was bowed, fingers poised on the keys. The image was raw, unposed, unguarded. It went viral within hours. Headlines didn't just speculate. They roared. "William versus Lang Lang, the royal showdown of the century," screamed one tabloid. "Crown versus keys," joked another. Social media jumped in too. Some posts praised him, a royal taking real risks. Others mocked him, splicing his piano footage with cartoon sound effects. One even layered it with a circus tune. But through it all, William said nothing. No statements, no press appearances. Silence was his strategy. Inside the palace, the staff walked on eggshells. Catherine shielded the children, blocking out the noise and redirecting questions. "Daddy's got a big project," she'd say, as George raised an eyebrow at the growing stack of music books on the dining table. But outside those palace walls, the world was building a storm. Betting lines opened. Analysts speculated on what piece William would perform, if he performed at all. Still, William kept practicing. Every night, the rumors no longer distracted him. If anything, they gave him fuel. Letters began arriving from across the UK. An 82-year-old war veteran wrote, "Haven't touched my piano in 30 years. You've made me want to again." A teenage boy wrote, "I used to think music was lame. Now I practice every day." William read them all. Sir Edward, seeing the tension boil outside, finally said, "The louder they get out there, the quieter you need to become in here." And William understood. He wasn't just playing music anymore. He was becoming it. With the media noise reaching a fever pitch and the world placing bets on whether a prince could truly rise to a maestro's challenge, only one thing remained: the stage. It was time for everything. Every memory, every mistake, every late-night note, to face the world. The Royal Albert Hall was waiting. The Royal Albert Reckoning. The night had arrived. Royal Albert Hall shimmered like a jewel under the London sky. Its iconic red brick walls glowed against the cold, drawing in a crowd that was anything but ordinary. Celebrities, diplomats, critics, and everyday admirers poured in, their chatter buzzing with curiosity. Would Prince William really play? Could he stand next to Lang Lang? Backstage, William stood alone. No fanfare, no royal ribbons, just a black suit and a photo of Diana tucked into his inside pocket. Sir Edward adjusted his cuffs, gave a tight nod, and simply said, "Trust your fingers and your heart." William exhaled deeply, not as a prince, not even as a pianist, but as a man walking into the unknown. Lang Lang went first. 3 pieces, flawless. Every note was a masterclass. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. Then, silence. One final performance remained, a duet. And then, the crowd saw him. William walked onto the stage. His posture was calm, but his eyes were focused. No smiles, no bows. He sat down beside Lang Lang. They began playing Clair de Lune. The first few notes were fragile. William's touch trembled, not from fear, but from feeling. Lang Lang's part was crisp, controlled. William's was warmer, more human. And as the piece unfolded, something rare happened. The 2 men, one born to music, the other born to monarchy, blended, and the room held its breath. By the final note, perfection didn't matter. What mattered was presence, purpose, and raw honesty. It was, in every sense, a reckoning. But sometimes, the truest applause comes after the music fades. As silence hung in the air, and the crowd absorbed what they'd just witnessed, what followed wasn't royal pageantry. It was something even deeper. A moment of universal respect, and something William had never expected to receive. A standing ovation. The final note echoed, then faded into a silence so deep, it felt sacred. For a heartbeat, no one clapped. No one moved. It wasn't hesitation, it was reverence. Then the applause came, first soft, then rising like a wave. It wasn't just approval, it was admiration. Not for perfection, but for presence, for courage, for truth. Lang Lang turned, gave William a brief nod, and bowed, not to royalty, but to a fellow artist. That one gesture said everything. Backstage, Catherine waited with tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered, embracing him. "And not for them, for you." Sir Edward stood nearby, arms crossed, fighting a smile. "You didn't crash and burn. Miraculous," he muttered. Later that night, as the world flooded social media with praise and admiration, William sat alone in the palace's old nursery. The upright piano stood before him, the once broken G key now perfectly tuned. He didn't rehearse. He didn't perform. He just played. A lullaby, a memory, a piece for his mother. That night, he wasn't Prince William. He was just William, a son, a father, a man who had found himself again between the notes. Pippa Middleton's emotional words didn't just crack the surface of a polished life, they revealed the weight she's quietly carried. Behind every headline and public appearance is a woman navigating love, loyalty, and personal struggle. Her silence had always been her strength, but breaking it? That was her courage. As royal watchers and the public begin to process her revelation, one question remains: what comes next? Is this the start of healing, or a final goodbye hidden behind grace? Whatever happens, one thing is clear. Pippa has spoken, and this time the world is finally listening. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.